everyone. Welcome to the Mosaic International South Asian Festival 2020 and the Q&A for the short film program, The Children Are Watching Us. I'm Sally Rilett, one of the short film programmers for this year's festival. MISAFF is presented by CCAI, the Canadian Community Arts Initiative, and the festival is running from December 4th to December 12th with a huge selection of outstanding films. Today, we have the amazing opportunity to talk to filmmakers and actors from the short film program, The Children Are Watching Us. This program is made up of 5 incredible short films centering around children's experiences and stories. They are Bitu by Karishma Dubey, The Brat by Sean Vyas, Show and Tell by Sakshi Gurnani, Bully by Adip Iyer, and Vest by Samir Mullah. I will hand it over now to Gavin Seal. I would like to introduce him as the host of the Q&A. Gavin Seal is an award-winning filmmaker who has had his films on CBC television as well as at MISAFF. Gavin currently runs one of the creative studios for Mattel, which is the #1 toy company in the world. He works with a lot of children, so he'll be leading this Q&A. And Gavin joins us from Montreal.
Thank you so much, Sally. I appreciate the opportunity. And as we get into this, I would also just like to thank MISAFF, the film festival, most of all, for doing this. This is obviously a very challenging time for everyone. And it's more important now than ever that we get the opportunity to share courageous films and talk to courageous filmmakers in this time to continue to inspire. And it's such an honor. I'm so grateful to be talking to the filmmakers here with these great stories that are super inspiring about our future with this program, The Children Are Watching. So I'd like to thank you two for being here. Adip Iyer, the director of Bully, and Karat Kadwani, who is the actor, one of the actors and producer in Show and Tell. Thank you for joining us. And Sally's also going to be chiming in from time to time with some questions from the audience. Everyone feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to chime in at any point. And I just learned recently on Zoom, this is the equivalent of clapping on camera. So feel free to applaud each other and tag each other. This is also a conversation. So if you have questions for each other, even the filmmakers, please go ahead. So thank you for being here. I'd like to first ask you each to introduce yourself. I'll start with Adip, just because you joined the chat first. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and also tell us what inspired your film, Bully.
Thanks, Gavin. Thanks, Sally, for having me on here. My name is Adip Iyer. I'm the writer, director, producer of Bully, my debut short film. Bully is about a 12-year-old in a city in urban India, struggling with bullying at school. I think going into writing the film, there were a lot of themes that were at the back of my mind. Predominantly, the theme was the schooling system and how the competitive nature of the schooling system, the way classrooms are divided and how teachers attend to students, how that creates dynamics where children face this tremendous peer pressure to stand out and discover their identity. And in that process, some very interesting things happen. And one of them is that school environments can be too much like a power struggle kind of an environment, where you're trying to establish yourself and trying to get some kind of a hold on the environment around you. That was really the germ of the thought in terms of what inspired me to write the film. The other aspect was the way children engage with their parents in cities where often in cities like in India, you often have working parents where both parents are working. So the kind of time and attention that you can have for your children, it takes a hit, and there are consequences of that as well. And so in that process, how this kid navigates bullying that's happening at school is what the film is about. And what interested me about that experience was that a lot of the experiences which children go through in terms of bullying are probably the most traumatic experiences for them. But as we process it as adults, we've obviously seen so much more in life. But for a child who's just about 10 to 12 years old, that's his or her entire life. So when he goes and experiences something like that, it's a very traumatic experience, and he doesn't have the perspective which people eventually end up having about how to process this experience. So those were some of the things that were in my mind as I went ahead in making this film. Yeah.
You talk about having the tools to process some of these traumas at this pivotal point in these characters' lives, but you also do a great job of contrasting this character's experience with the parental unit who, you have these great scenes where, they're at the dinner table, the dad's talking about, his experience, the mom's talking about her experience. They're not neglecting, but obviously you're paralleling the real world, the adult world with the child's world, and it's really beautifully kind of woven together. And so can you expand on any of that and how, you're talking about he doesn't really have the tools, but do any of us have the tools, right? Like to kind of in society, whether it's like a school system or larger society, like we're all kind of unpacking as we go, and we're trying to like build our parachutes on the way down. Can you speak to any of that and how you kind of approached kind of contrasting those two realities between the parent and the adult?
Right. So in terms of the contrast, I think the parents are going through a journey of their own. When you have work environments which can be stressful, high functioning, you carry a lot of it in your daily life. And so for me, that part was interesting because when they're sitting down at the table, there's so much there is for them to unload. And somewhere that gets mixed up with the parenting attention that they also have to give. So at the time of making it, you speak about tools. There were some conversations as part of my research, I was having conversations with a psychologist, and we sort of broke down different approaches to parenting. And we had something called the authoritative parenting, which is very back and forth with the child, but at the same time, it establishes boundaries as to who's in authority and who has the final say. Then you have something called the authoritarian parenting, which is more about the parents seeing themselves as the provider figures, as figures who are there to support when necessary. And sometimes it resembles a relationship which is very transactional. But to be honest, it could also be because that's how they've understood parenting when they grew up. So yeah, it's not an easy question to answer if what kind of tools people could have. But I do think there is a need for many more conversations about the schooling system and how parenting takes place, and how do we negotiate these pathways with children, because those are formative years, and I think a lot that happens in that period of life, it stays with you, and it shapes you. So yes, I think definitely more conversations, and that would be a good start.
And now that we're talking about parents, Kirat, you are an actor and producer of Show and Tell, also an amazing film that I guess leans a little more towards the parent side of understanding a child's perspective. And I think your character in particular, as much as the child is maybe the child isn't even coming to terms with anything. The child seems to be pretty at peace with who he is, and it's always the parent that is going through a bit of a coming of age in terms of her understanding of her son. Would you mind introducing yourself as an actor and a producer, and maybe speak a little bit to the film and your inspirations?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirat and Kedwani. I'm the lead actor and co-producer of Show and Tell, which I hope you'll be able to check out. It's a 10-minute short film. We're very proud to make it. It's a commentary on gender and identity. within a South Asian family framework. I do also have an accent in the film, exciting. But the film is really about, it's really about our perceptions and preconceived notions as adults that we put on children when they might not even be aware of what they're asking for or doing or how they view the world. And isn't that a common theme? You know, children are not hateful when they come into this world. We teach them how to hate or love, and we teach children acceptance for themselves as for others as well. So this film is not really an LGBTQ film, but it's about gender, notions about gender and gender norms. A male child wants a pink ice cream or a female Barbie doll, and all of a sudden, what do we then assume about the child? So this is really trying to test us and show adults that, hey, we need to relax and we need to let children be children. We need to let people be people and let them be on their own journey.
And one of the things I loved about the film also was that I think, we talk a lot about toxic masculinity and how boys are raised to meet a certain expectation of gender and identity. And I love that a lot of this film was told through the perspective of the mother, which I hope it's not spoiling anything to the audience, and hopefully they saw it in the program. If they haven't, they absolutely should check it out. But I love how you explore this notion of the gender identity of the male child through the mother's perspective. And I guess the spoiler is that the turn is that he looks up to his mother. Mm-hmm. And there's something so, I was going to say beautiful or gorgeous, but it's like that idea and how the characters connect of like challenging and subverting that idea that she comes to realize that he looks up to his mom as a way of her into understanding her son is I think on to me quite subversive and really groundbreaking. So can you speak at all to not only that and to your character, but as a producer, how you approached kind of that element of the narrative?
Absolutely. When I first got the film, when I just auditioned for it, I had to read it a few times to understand the true theme and message of the film, because you're absolutely right. It is sort of told from the perspective of the mother, and she's not a hateful person. She signifies every mother, and it's a universal mother. It's not just an Indian mother, but it's all mothers, because mothers want to take care of their children, and they fear for their children, and she doesn't understand her child at this moment in his life. And there's a lot of ignorance that surrounds her because of her own upbringing. And this was something that I was very connected to, because I thought, like growing up, of course, like I had certain toys, right? And I didn't have other toys. And even now in clothing stores, right? I saw a meme yesterday where someone moved all the NASA t-shirts from the boys section and put it into the girls section. So it exists today. It exists in these like small little ways, but it enters into the minds of children. And we as adults, we're the ones who are doing that. We're the ones who are projecting our own insecurities, our own preconceptions, our own upbringings onto children, and they don't even know what we're talking about. So that's what attracted me to the project. I came on as a co-producer late in the game because I just wanted to help the film. I really believe in the message of the film. Such a simple concept and a 10-minute film, and I feel it has such a punch and such a message that can really, without hammering it over someone's head. I think that's the power of show and tell, is that you watch it and it makes you think and reflect, and it makes you laugh a little because you realize how silly you might have been in your own life.
Kids are kind of caught in the waves of destruction of like the parents and the projections of their traumas. Sally, do we have any questions from the audience, or could I do I have time for more questions, because I have lots?
Yeah, go ahead, Gavin.
So just let me know when there's a question from the audience. Of course, for anyone watching it, please do send your questions through. We'd love to have them. I want to talk about casting a little bit. Obviously, the children are watching. It's, I mean, you know, it's tough. It's tough casting kids. It's tough working with kids. There are laws. There are just ethics. Karat, can I ask you from a producer's standpoint? I'll start with you. How did you find this great kid, and how did he connect to the material? How did you connect with him?
Yeah, Sakshi, the director, who she was a MFA student at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. So she actually made this film for her MFA thesis, and she's now in India. But she auditioned a few child actors, and then I believe that somebody gave her a recommendation for Max, and he came in. He's, you know, he was so smart and delightful. And I remember in the callback is when I met him, and he was so like comfortable. We were so comfortable together, and I almost felt like I became his mother in the callback. I was like, put that over there. And then he was like, okay. And I felt that he was listening to me. And I when I scolded him in the callback in the scene, he didn't get scared. He just looked at me, and I thought, oh man, I hope I get this role because he's so cute and I want to work with him. And you know, he was so delightful on set, even in breaks. Like he's like a grown, you know, old soul who's eating kale chips. And I was like, dude, what are you? He's like 7 years old. He plays 5 in the you know, in the film, and I was like, what are you eating? Kale? And he's like, I don't like sugar. I like kale chips. And I was like, okay, great. You know, so it was a real, like, I felt we were connected, and I felt we had a really good time. And he's a newbie. So every now and again, I'd like whisper in his ear and give him direction. I'd be like, don't upset the director. Just do this. So, you know, it just worked out, and it was so fun and so nice to see how focused he was. It really felt like he'd been acting for a really long time.
Was this his first film?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. You can't tell. There's an old soul in there. That's. I can't wait to see what happens with his career as he develops that. Adip, can you speak to? You have more of an ensemble cast, not just with the kids, but also with the family. And can you speak to how you cast? I'll ask about the kids specifically. Obviously, a very strong ensemble cast. How did you find your lead, and then how did you build around that?
So my testing process was driven not so much by auditions, because I think I mean, while working out the process of casting, I realized that a lot of what I wanted to show needed to be derivative from the child's own experience in school. And so I think the testing process was driven driven through interviews with the cast. And the interview was about their school experience and what kind of dynamics they had in school, how they, you know, there were little aspects like if they had some kind of issue with any child in class, do they report them to parents or do they report them to teachers? So there were those kind of elements that we got into while interviewing the kids. Kushagra, who was my lead actor, and he was very open about some of the difficult experiences he had at school. We got into areas where, you know, some experiences were so difficult that he would go days feeling sad and, you know, crying from time to time. And there was also, we also got into aspects like that when you're crying, do you find yourself, do you find that you're judging yourself, and you find that there might be others who might be judging you, and so therefore you don't want to cry, and you feel, you know, this deep humiliation that you're being bullied at school, and you know, and having this terrible experience. And so Kushagra opened about those aspects. So it was more finding the right cast was about finding the experience and taking the person who had the experience. It was a little more tricky when it came to casting the kids who were bullying Kushagra. And in that sense, Manav, who plays Anand, who's the sort of who's having a tough time of his own in class. We spoke about what kind of power dynamics he had in school. He was an average student, but like I remember asking him a question that, do you have somebody who gives you trouble in class? He's like, nobody gives me trouble in class. So I was like, okay, great. Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, I'm looking for people who can just sort of come in with that confidence and elements. And that's how I went about casting the others. Insofar as the parents were concerned, that was more of a traditional audition-driven process. So we cast the children first, and then we sort of set about casting some of the adults, starting with the parents and the teachers. So their casting process was a little more traditional.
I think we're running out of time, but I do have a couple more questions before I throw it back to Sally to wrap it up. Sally? I think you're on mute, Sally.
Sorry, my mute button wasn't working.
You're back on mute. So we're having a little bit of a Skypey thing.
My computer is going on mute by itself. So this question, the first half was actually already answered in the last question. It was, how did you cast your film, and how was the film received for both films? So that came from the Facebook Live.
Awesome. Well, so I guess I'll throw it out to both of you. I guess the question from the audience, Sally, is how has your film been received? Karat, can we start with you?
Thankfully, we've had a really great festival run so far. So many people have been messaging us and contacting us to tell us that they really love the simplicity of the film. For those of you who are tuning in, it's about a mother who feels her 5-year-old son might be gay because he wants dolls and pink ice cream. And and in addition to that, we've won several awards ranging from best student film, as it was developed originally as an MFA thesis, to best actor, best LGBT, which was surprising to us because it's in that world, but it's not what you would consider to be a true, as they say, LGBTQ film, because but it is definitely inclusive for the LGBTQ community, and any parent who would be who is thinking about how they would address certain situations with their child, even in terms of discussing what gay means, which can be very difficult for parents, especially in the South Asian community. So awards have been nice, and people have really found value in the film. So we're really grateful, and we're really looking forward to see how audiences in Canada view the film as well.
Has been receiving Bully?
The response. I mean, I've been very overwhelmed with the response that the film has been getting, both in its festival run and in terms of the in terms of people in the industry in Bombay as well as other places in India, how they've been seeing it and how they've been receiving it, and speaking to specific aspects of the film. So that's been very, very encouraging. Recently, there was a showing also at Dharamshala International Film Festival, so that was lovely. Before that, there were festivals in Dublin, Italy, Moscow, a lot of places where it's been well received and awarded. And the response has been tremendously encouraging. And what I'm doing is I'm also looking forward to some other festivals as we are going on into the new year, because with a lot of them, the festival program got delayed. But overall, the response has been very encouraging, and it's been very great for my team. I feel truly humbled and blessed.
I mean, the power of cinema is being able to tell these stories that I think transcend any geographic boundary, especially in times like this. And I'm glad you're both having such success. You totally deserve it. I think we have another question from the audience. But before I get to that, I need to ask, Adip, your film is bookended by these two single shots that so beautifully demonstrate the transformation that in a very short time of your film that your character goes through. And again, for anyone who hasn't seen it, you got to see it, but it opens with him crying in front of a bus stop, I think. And it closes with him having become the bully that he once was bullied by, and reaping the rewards as he eats his Toblerone bar with his head held high. Can you speak to really how you approach that? And to be honest, I think it's such a just brilliant artistic choice. And how did you get there in the storyboard, so to speak?
So I think before I sat down to write the film, the opening and the closing shot, I wanted to be very clear on what they would be, because in the writing process, I wanted to discover what the journey is going to be for Raman. So that's where that choice came from. And so the idea was, and when I was speaking to some people at the stage of writing the script, there were questions about opening the film at that stage with Raman crying at the bus stop. So for the opening, it was both a decision based on the kind of runtime which we wanted to achieve, and straight away, like, getting the audience into the conflict very quickly, because with a short film, you don't have that kind of time to lay it out in comparison to features. So that was the reason. But the thought was that if we do it like that, how can we do it powerfully? And so that's where for me the choice came from. And also what I wanted to do was, by the end of the film, I wanted to generate a lot of empathy for the experience which Raman has gone through, because even while we see him at the end of the film at the bus stop again, having found some kind of an equilibrium in the way his life is going, I wanted audiences at the time to think back to the moment where he started, so that they don't feel disconnected from the process. And for them, bully doesn't become like a label. It's a much more complex thing. So these were some of the thoughts behind going ahead and using that first shot and the last shot.
I guess I fell into the trap by saying he became the bully. I do recognize it's obviously a very complex film, and that's what I love about it. Karat, as an actor producer, like, at what point did you become involved in? Because you mentioned writing, you mentioned casting. So, in terms of the chicken or the egg, or in your involvement in the project, can you walk us through? I guess the behind the camera. In front of the camera, what was like your relationship with the film in that regard?
Well, I'm an actor first and foremost, and of course, I write and produce projects as well. So this, I saw the casting call and I simply auditioned for it, and had a couple of callbacks and got the part. I was really excited that this film has a South Asian cast and largely female cast and crew, which you don't often see. And I think that's, thanks to Sakshi, who's the female director. And it's nice to see when there's diversity in that way. I came on as a co-producer just sort of this year to, like I said, I believe I come on as producer for projects that I really believe in, scripts that I feel have a strong message, a strong, activism message. I consider myself an artivist, which is art and activism put together. So I love when films can make people think, move things forward, move society forward, and get people to really accept others. Because, no matter where you, and I think the beauty of this film in particular is no matter where you stand on the topic of LGBTQ, you will appreciate this film. And I can pretty much guarantee that, because it's not just about that. It is about your own perceptions and how you see the world, and how you see your children, and how we perpetuate gender norms, and gender inequalities, and how can we bridge these gaps? How can we create a balance so that people don't feel alone? How many times do we hear that the children, especially now, we're talking about this film about children who are bullies. Where does all this come from? It comes from parents. It comes from their family. It comes from people that they're surrounding with. It comes from a lack of love, right? And it all goes hand in hand. So how can we stop this from happening? How can we start, enabling children to feel empowered and strong, and feel that they don't need to judge other people, that they can feel happy with themselves? Because people who are happy with themselves, they don't bully others, right? We don't put other people down. We try to make things better for other people. So that's what really attracted me to this project. And I thought I would love to come on as a co-producer, get it into as many festivals as I can, maybe get some awards, and really try to get people to see the film, because that's what this is all about. And why are we creating films? Why are we in this festival? Why are we doing anything that we do? It's because we really want to change even one person's mind. Because if we do that, then maybe something will shift, and true change will happen. So I'm so glad to be part of this film, and I'm so glad to be part of this festival as well.
You being here, I think to your point, and kind of the theme of this is the children are watching, but it's such a complex conversation. And so again, I want to express gratitude for the two of you being here to kind of unravel some of the threads, expose some of them, and be a part of this conversation. And more than that, for making these films that hopefully are leading everyone watching to have these conversations with themselves internally and with their communities externally. So thank you for doing that in this challenging time. We have another question from the audience that is probably a good note to end this on. With all the challenges of this year, someone out in the crowd, I don't have a name, but is very excited to know what you are doing next. So Karat, could you tell us a little bit of, I guess to some extent, how are filmmakers and artists, how are you continuing to as an artivist, create, express, share in this time, and what is your next project?
Well, I actually was able to shoot another short film just last month, which was so surprising during pandemic time to get cast and shoot the film. And it was such a safe set. And it was really fun to play a diner waitress who wins the lottery and things change. That's all I will say. But, it was so surreal to be back on set, but then also see the real commitment from filmmakers and the crew and the other actors to just, be safe, but also just really do great work. And really, I have to say that role, I was so thrilled to get it, because literally played every single emotion under the sun in this role, from sheer happiness of winning the lottery to anger, to fear, to guilt, to true grief. I mean, this, in a 10, 15-minute film, you're going to see me do it all. And that was so amazing. And then, I'm just always looking for great scripts that have great, as I say, a true female lead role. Not necessarily where the female is backing up the male lead, but a true female lead role. So when I see those scripts that also have perhaps, a message, a positive message, then I'm always interested to look at it, to think about producing it, act in it. etc. So I'm hopeful, and I think that 2021 is going to be really great, much better than this year, obviously. And I think that we're going to be doing some really great work as well.
Adip, what do you have lined up as your next project or projects?
So there are a couple of threads that are in place as far as I'm concerned. One is I'm just working on a feature script. Just started writing it. Hopefully, I intend to finish it in the coming months. I also have taken a role with a studio here in India at Annapurna Studios. I'm their creative producer. They have several projects which are on the ground, running even as we speak. There are a couple of web series which are afoot and feature film projects which I'm sort of looking into and taking creative decisions on. So those are the two things which which I'm personally involved in.
Just before I throw it back to Sally to wrap this up, Adip, how can people find you, follow you, and keep their fingers on the pulse of what you're up to and what you got coming up?
Great question, Gavin. I think the first thing is, one is in terms of social media, any project which I would be sort of pushing through, I would be going ahead and sharing that there. In terms of people reaching out in the other role which I have as the creative producer, I do review scripts and synopsis, and anybody who wants to go ahead and send that across, they can have my email ID, and we can see if there can be a conversation on that front.
Awesome. And Karat, how can people follow you? I think, Adip, that's very courageous for you to suggest that you're going to be giving out your email address to the script writers in the audience, but that's awesome. MISAFF's all about courageous cinema. Appreciate that. Karat, what social media handles? How can people reach out? How can people follow? How can people keep up with you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at They Call Me Q Show. They Call Me Q Show on Twitter and Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, Q Kadwani. If you have my last name, you can find me there. But IMDb is there. You can always just Google and find all the, or my website and find the ways to keep in touch.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you both being here, for everyone being here, everyone listening in, for watching these incredible films. Especially thank you to MISAFF for, in the face of all this adversity and everything that's happening, for continuing to get great art out there to share and bring people together, even if it is virtually for now. And hopefully it won't be long before we're all back in theaters watching these things on the big screen. So thank you both. Thank you, MISAFF. And Sally, I'll throw it back to you.
Very well said. Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who joined. Thank you for joining us from around the world, Adip and Karat, for this very insightful Q&A. If anyone in the audience hasn't watched the shorts film program, The Children Are Watching Us, definitely go and watch it. And tomorrow we have our second shorts film program Q&A with the Shorts 3, Her Story to Tell, at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And later today at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we also have a Facebook Live with the Ketu filmmaker of Ketu, Amartya Bhattacharya. So please join us again for there. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Have a great MISAFF 2020.
Thank you.